Chapter 14, Government and the Economy. During this chapter, we are going to discuss economic systems, power and authority, types of government, political behavior in the United States, models of power structure in the U.S., war and peace, and changing economies. Economic systems. So an economic system is a social institution through which goods and services are produced, distributed, and consumed. Then we have our political system, and it's a set of procedures for implementing and achieving society's goals. And the political system will use an economic system. Industrial society is a society that depends on the mechanization to produce its goods and services. So using more and more technology to produce services. Then we have capitalism and socialism. Capitalism. So this is where a small amount of companies will have most of the power when it comes to the economics of a certain country. And then laissez-faire is where the government is not involved when it comes to business or people's personal lives. And monopoly is where a certain business controls the market. Socialism is where production and distribution is owned collectively rather than privately owned. So it's more like the citizens have ownership versus just certain companies. And then communism is where all property is communally owned. So everyone owns things and things are more equal. So there isn't room for anyone to work hard and make more money. The informal economy is the transfer of money or goods or any services that is not reported to the government, and that makes it hard to measure. Power. So that's the ability to exercise one's will over others, and that is from Weber. Sources of power in political systems come from force, influence, and authority. So force is actual or threatened use of coercion to impose one's will on others. So that is using force. So that would be like in a negative manner, using power over someone else. Influence is exercise of power through a process of persuasion. And then authority is institutionalized power recognized by the people over whom it is exercised. Types of authority. So there are 3 different types according to Weber. We have traditional authority, and that would be from custom or accepted practice. So it could be power that's passed down from like kings or queens or a chief. Rational legal power is made legitimate by law. So basically the power that we have written in our Constitution for the president. And then charismatic authority is power that's made legitimate by the leaders' appeal to others. So they have a personality that makes people want to follow them and believe in them. There are different types of government, and the first one we're going to discuss is the monarchy, which is headed by a single member of a royal family, and that power is passed down or conferred to them. And people used to believe that God granted them this right, even though it was passed down through lineage. But now there are monarchs in certain places that are just there for ceremony purposes, but it's not like they rule. Like if there's a monarch, they still may have a separate form of government, such as parliament. An oligarchy is a form of government in which a few individuals rule. So that could be the military, it could be small forms of government. In a dictatorship, the government has one person who has nearly almost all power, and they can create and enforce laws. And then totalitarianism basically involves complete government control and surveillance over people's lives. So the government has access to everything and anything people do. A democracy is government run by the people and is for the people, and a representative democracy elects certain people to represent and speak for the large masses. Political behavior in the US. So there are many aspects of our system that people probably take for granted because they don't know what it's like for others in other countries that don't have as many freedoms or as many rights as we do. So we have the Bill of Rights. We have two major political parties, even though we have a myriad of other parties. We have secret ballots, elected presidents, a distinct state and local government. Participation and apathy. So people seem to be less enthusiastic about the elections in the US. However, these are older numbers. So recently there has been more turnout in different types of groups. And there's been more participation when it comes to people as far as paying attention to the government, because it's not just on C-SPAN or on the news or in papers. It is in schools, it's online, it's within social media, it's on YouTube. So many people can get involved. Also through text messaging and any other type of system where you can communicate with someone else. You can get your politics now. So more people are becoming involved, even though the numbers from 2012 and 2014, the voter turnout had fell during that time. Race and gender in politics. So the U.S. has been slow to include minorities and to include women in the U.S. political system. Power elite model. So the elite are the people that run countries or run the world. So the elite model basically shows that society is ruled by a small group of individuals who share a common set of political and economic interests. And no matter who is president or what party is currently ruling, they still work to make sure their needs are met or their desires are met. Mill's model, so it talks about the power elite, could be a small ruling elite of military, industrial, and government leaders. And there are relatively few, but they operate as a self-conscious, cohesive unit. So they always work together to make sure their desires are met, their will is met, no matter who is in charge. And there's more research going on about the global power elite, but usually these groups like to be kept out of the limelight. Domhoff's model talks about how the elite, which could come in the form of corporations or people or businesses, and how they stay in power. These elite are mainly older white males who are part of the upper class, and that's the top 1%, top 2% that we're talking about. And in the electoral arena, there's two coalitions. So they have the corporate conservative coalition and they have the liberal labor coalition. So the corporate conservative coalition plays a large role in both political parties or both of our major political parties, and they generate support for particular candidates directly to whomever those candidates might appeal to. And then the Liberal Labor Coalition deals with environmental organizations, churches, universities, parts of minority groups, so they're basically targeting groups. Figure 14-4 are two different power elite models, and you could basically see that the power elite is involved in everything, every aspect of how our government works. The pluralist model deals with different groups within a community that may have access to the government, and that no single group can dominate. However, this doesn't address the elites that are still in charge no matter what is going on with the government. And it doesn't even acknowledge the distribution of power in the United States or the stratification when it comes to economics, race, and gender. When it comes to war, there are three sociological approaches that the text talks about. There is the global view that talks about nations becoming engaged in war using military. There's a nation-state view that discusses the interactions of politics within a country or a certain state. And then there is the micro view that focuses on the impact that it has on the individuals in society. Peace is the absence of war. So the vast majority of armed conflicts occur within rather than between states or between countries. Global Peace Index, so at the top, very peaceful, and at the bottom, there's great civil unrest, so the people aren't happy there. The U.S. ranks 94 on the list out of 162 nations, and nations cannot maintain security through threatening violence. Some governments do believe in violence, but it usually makes the people rebel more with greater strength and for a longer time, and it also forms mistrust of the government. Terrorism is the use or threat of violence against random or symbolic targets in pursuit of political aims. So it's supposed to bring around terror, fear, intimidation, hopelessness, helplessness. Terrorists use the media in order to spread their message and to get people recruited, and also to claim responsibility and to instill fear. There's cyber attacks, there's biological warfare, there's chemical warfare, there's violence. It can be domestic terrorism or international terrorism. There's different types of terrorism. There should be with bombs, but basically they have a message they're trying to get across, and they are meaning to instill fear. Changing economies. So the elite power model basically has people working for the elite or for the elite's companies. There's less advancement of, somebody from a small town that's trying to start their own business because the corporations are running everything. So we have a changing workforce, and that could be with race, it could be with gender, the amount of people that work until their retirement age or even past that. Then there is deindustrialization, and that basically is where we stop investing in plants and things that keep our country going, such as farming and technology, and also like car manufacturers, stuff like that, where the money's being taken out of it. We have the sharing economy, and that's where it's sort of like the gig economy, where people pay to have food delivered, and also where people rent out their homes, such as with Airbnb. So those are like quick ways of making money and also sharing your assets with others. Then there's the temporary workforce, and that's where companies basically are hiring a lot of part-time workers, and they're not really relying on full-time workers. So that makes it more difficult for people trying to get ahead, but the companies actually pay less in benefits when it comes to part-time workers. And then there's offshoring, and that's basically sending our businesses overseas, so that way but companies can spend less money paying them versus keeping the companies in the U.S. So basically not building cars or computers or wherever it might be in other countries with less money. The changing face of the workforce. So the workforce is constantly changing. We have more women that are working. We have youth that work. We have people that work past the typical retirement age. And we have different groups of minorities working that cross ethnic. Deindustrialization deals with the withdrawal of investment in basic aspects of productivity, and it can take the form of corporate restructuring, but basically anything that keeps our country going, or a certain state even going, would be sent somewhere else, or those companies will rely more on technology and less on people and factories and workers. And there's also downsizing, and that reduces the company's workforce. The sharing economy could also be called the gig economy in some ways. So basically, it's connecting people that own things with people that want things or are willing to pay to get things. So you think of Lyft, Uber, Airbnb, Grubhub, DoorDash. So some people argue that the sharing economy is an extension of the temporary workforce, which you definitely can see them overlapping. A lot of the times people may get money from these jobs, but they don't get any benefits or security. The temporary workforce is part-time workforce, or people that also work in the gig economy, but they're seasonal, they're temporary, they aren't afforded benefits, and it's accelerated by economic downturn. So basically people are aiming for any job that they can get, and others are being pushed out. So some workers want to work part-time, but a lot of people would love to work full-time and have the benefits and added security. Also precarious work, so work that is poorly paid or work that is also dangerous. Offshoring involves transferring our businesses and companies to other countries in order to have foreign contractors, because usually those foreign contractors charge less than it would be to keep the companies in the US. So as far as conflict theorists, this aspect of globalization furthers social inequality because it makes those in the third world countries, they still don't get paid as much as they would if they were in the US. So it sort of makes a different rung of the lower class than we have here as far as homelessness goes. And some companies do come back to the US when they are offered extra incentive and benefits. And the more work we send overseas, the less people in America are able to complete basic jobs, such as, building a car, building computers, building phones, construction. Table 14-2 lists occupations most vulnerable to offshoring, and this is taken from 2008.